The first decade of the 20th century was a time of profound change. As nations grappled with the complexities of modernization, humanity saw unprecedented advancements in technology, politics, and culture. These events laid the groundwork for the modern world, introducing us to air travel, political revolutions, and cultural renaissances. Let's delve deeper into the most impactful events of this transformative decade. In 1901, Guglielmo Marconi achieved a feat once thought impossible, transmitting a wireless telegraph signal across the Atlantic Ocean from Cornwall, England to St. John's, Newfoundland. This breakthrough reduced the vast Atlantic to a mere whisper, revolutionizing global communication and laying the foundation for modern telecommunications. By 1909, Marconi's contributions earned him the Nobel Prize in Physics, shared with Carl Ferdinand Braun, further cementing his legacy. The dream of human flight became a reality on December 17, 1903, when Orville and Wilbur Wright launched their first successful powered flight at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The 12-second flight covered just 120 feet, but it was a giant leap for mankind. The Wright brothers' determination ignited the aviation industry, transforming how people and goods moved across the world. By the end of the decade, aviation technology had advanced rapidly, with demonstrations of longer, higher, and more controlled flights. While flight was making history, so was the automobile. In 1908, Henry Ford introduced the Model T, a car that changed everything. Before the Model T, cars were a luxury item reserved for the wealthy. Ford's innovative use of the assembly line made production faster and cheaper, reducing costs dramatically. By the end of the decade, cars became a staple of middle-class life in the United States, fundamentally altering city planning, commerce, and daily life. One of the most significant political events of the decade occurred in 1905 with the Russian Revolution. Sparked by widespread discontent over poor working conditions, economic hardship, and political oppression, the revolution culminated in Bloody Sunday, when peaceful protesters marching to present a petition to Tsar Nicholas II were fired upon by the Imperial Guard. This event forced the Tsar to issue the October Manifesto, which promised civil liberties and the creation of the Duma, a legislative assembly. Though short-lived, it marked the beginning of the end for imperial autocracy in Russia and paved the way for the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. The United States emerged as a dominant global power during this period. After its victory in the Spanish-American War in 1898, the U.S. acquired territories such as Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, marking the country's entrance into imperialism. In 1904, President Theodore Roosevelt declared the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, asserting America's right to intervene in Latin American countries to maintain stability. This policy led to U.S. involvement in nations like Cuba, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, setting a precedent for future American foreign policy in the Western Hemisphere. In 1905, a Swiss patent clerk named Albert Einstein shook the scientific world with 4 groundbreaking papers that redefined physics. His special theory of relativity introduced the world to the equation E equals mc squared, demonstrating the relationship between mass and energy. This theory challenged Newtonian physics and reshaped our understanding of space, time, and the universe, influencing everything from nuclear energy to modern cosmology. Science wasn't just advancing in physics. In 1903, Marie Curie, alongside her husband Pierre Curie and Henri Becquerel, was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for their pioneering research into radioactivity. Marie Curie would later win a second Nobel Prize in 1911 for chemistry, making her the first person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields. Her work on radioactivity laid the groundwork for modern cancer treatments and medical imaging, such as X-rays. Another key advancement was the mass production of aspirin by the Bayer Company in the early 1900s. Though developed in 1899, aspirin became a widely used pain reliever during this decade, transforming medicine by providing a simple, effective way to manage pain and reduce fevers, thus improving public health on a global scale. The early 20th century saw an explosion of artistic innovation. In 1907, Pablo Picasso painted Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, a bold departure from traditional forms, signaling the birth of Cubism. Alongside artists like Georges Braque, Picasso's work challenged classical notions of perspective and form, paving the way for modern art movements that dominated the 20th century. The decade was equally transformative in literature. Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness from 1902 exposed the brutality of European imperialism in Africa, influencing future generations of writers. Meanwhile, Scott Joplin popularized ragtime music, blending African-American rhythms with European classical music, setting the stage for the emergence of jazz in the following decade. His 1902 composition, The Entertainer, became a defining sound of the era. In one of the first major conflicts of the century, Japan defeated Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, marking the first time an Asian power triumphed over a European one in modern warfare. The victory boosted Japanese nationalism and destabilized Russia, indirectly fueling the 1905 Russian Revolution. The Second Boer War, which ended in 1902, saw British forces defeat the Boer republics in South Africa. While Britain emerged victorious, the war was costly and highlighted the limits of British imperialism, fueling nationalist movements in South Africa that would shape the country's future. The modern Olympic Games gained prominence in this decade, with the 1904 St. Louis Olympics and the 1908 London Olympics showcasing a growing international interest in sports. Women also made their Olympic debut in 1900, breaking traditional gender barriers in sports. The Tour de France, first held in 1903, became a defining event in competitive cycling. By the end of the decade, the race had grown into a massive international competition, blending physical endurance with national pride and establishing itself as a cultural spectacle. The first decade of the 20th century was a crucible of change. It was a time of unprecedented innovation, political upheaval, and cultural flourishing. From the skies over Kitty Hawk to the scientific breakthroughs of Einstein and Curie, humanity took bold steps into a new era. This decade not only shaped the century to come, but also proved that progress, while often challenging, is unstoppable.